Hi, everyone. Welcome to Crypto Law TV. I'm your host for this episode, Christy Warner. It's been a while since I've seen you all, but I'm excited for today's episode. I would like to introduce our special guest, Ron Hammond, who is the Director of Government Relations at the Blockchain Association. Welcome, Ron.
Thanks for having me, Christy. Big fan, obviously, of the podcast, so really excited to dive in here because there's a lot to cover.
There sure is. I want to start a little bit more about just you, your background, and how you got into the crypto industry.
Sure thing. So I definitely have a very unique path, to say the least, when it comes to getting to the crypto side of things. So before that, I came into the crypto stuff. I was actually working in this building behind me, or I guess this building, in the Capitol for Warren Davidson from Ohio. So I joined his staff. For those who don't know, congressional staff, probably around 8 or 9 people or so for every House office. And so I was tasked with more doing his finance policy. And at the time, we were trying to find a way for him to really make a name for himself early on into the financial services career for him. And it's kind of territorial. It's very much like high school, where a lot of members say, like, hey, I want venture capital issues, or I want to do housing issues. And after going back and forth for years, or months in 2017, it became the ICO boom. And all of a sudden, Warren Davidson goes, I think I want to do the crypto bill. I want to find a way to regulate this industry, make sure innovation thrives. And he turns to me at 24 years old and says, do you know anything about crypto? I said, not really, besides the Silk Road. And he says, congratulations, your job is to write the bill to regulate it. So I spent the whole next year and a half meeting folks in the industry, a lot of lawyers, a lot of folks on Capitol Hill, just talking about crypto as a whole. And realized I really liked it a lot and decided to make that more my full-time gig. So I worked with Warren Davidson on the Token Taxonomy Act, which was the first bipartisan bill to regulate crypto along the securities and commodities lines here that we've seen now kind of evolve to Fit 21, which I'm sure we'll get into very soon. And that had 4 Republicans, 4 Democrats. Always wanted to make sure we started off with a very strong bipartisan coalition. And I eventually said that this is a great industry. I want to keep working in crypto full time. Became Ripple's in-house lobbyist for a year, and then went more to the trade association side at the Blockchain Association. So it's been over 4 years now, which has been pretty crazy to see, especially in the past 4 years, just how crazy it's gotten. So that's my career and how I got here, but I'm sure there'll be plenty more we'll cover on that end.
That is amazing. So you really had only heard of Silk Road and then ended up being in charge of writing basically the first bipartisan bill for crypto.
Yeah, and I'm not a lawyer personally, so as a Hill staffer, 24 is really tough. But the good thing is that there were so many lawyers within the industry and in DC that were really helpful in terms of just walking me through the process, educating me. We also had a roundtable at the Library of Congress, which is right over here actually, and we had 50 CEOs come in, and we kind of did an inverse hearing because we were trying to get a hearing in financial services in 2017, 2018 on the issue. And no one was really biting. And so we said, screw it. Let's just do our own hearing. And we're just going to do the inverse. Instead of having 50 members of Congress and 5 witnesses, we're going to have 5 members of Congress and 50 witnesses. And CNBC live streamed the whole thing. So it was really awesome to have that moment to kind of be the catalyst for moving forward for the Token Taxonomy Act. But it took a lot of work. And obviously, we still have a long way to go, both with Fit 21 and a plethora of other issues. But it's been really exciting to kind of be here since like day one. When it comes to crypto and politics, because not many folks really cared about crypto back in 2017, but now it is the hot topic on Capitol Hill, which has been incredible to see recently.
Absolutely. So before we get into the relevant bills and the crazy things that are happening on the Hill related to crypto, I want to know a little bit more about what it is that you do at the Blockchain Association.
So the Blockchain Association is a DC trade association. We're comprised of about 100 companies right now. And they range the gamut from your big players like Circle, Coinbase, A16Z, to really more of the small startups here. We're getting like Alio, for example, and Compound, several others. So we range the gambit. You have to be a U.S.-based company, and you have to have a desire, obviously, to interact with DC and be constructive in the conversation, not just post on Twitter, attacking folks left and right and center. And my job personally, I'm more on the lobbying side here. So I'm more on the front lines, literally here in DC. And my job is mostly the Republican side of the aisle. And my colleague, Dave Grimaldi, does the Democrat side. So candidly, my job is probably a little easier than his when it comes to support for crypto. But at the same time, it's not just, being pro-crypto. It's like, let's make sure we get this policy right. And let's get the right folks in there. Let's get the right lawyers to engage you and the member of Congress or the staffer and let's get some good policy going forward, because it's a lot more than just a few things, a few tweets here and there.
So would you say, what would you say would be one of the biggest hurdles in trying to make sure that the policies are right from your perspective?
Yeah, so unlike a lot of issues, so like take banking, for example, a lot of the policy issues that come up in banking, there's already clear dividing lines on policy of, where the Republicans sit versus where the Democrats sit. It's very rare to have even bipartisan movement together, especially in financial services. It's just a committee for the large part that's been very partisan. But our hope is that, at least with crypto, the lines aren't drawn. There aren't decades of precedent here. This is a whole brand new policy territory. And that's really rare. I mean, we saw a little bit back in fintech on Capitol Hill, and that was there, but that's kind of not as groundbreaking or new as crypto is. Especially when we have the laws being the 1930s and 40s. Like, that's not really a great way to regulate this 21st century technology. So a lot of it is relying on the folks, the in-house experts at these various companies, like the general counsels or the lobbyists themselves, and bringing those folks in front of Capitol Hill and the right policymakers, and saying, hey, look, these are really sharp securities lawyers. These are really sharp folks when it comes to custody. Just trying to plug and play the right folks, so we get a good dialogue and good conversation, but B, we also get a better product at the end of the day. And it's been really exciting to see that. For a long time, it was just a handful of folks here in DC. And I remember during the broker rule that happened in 2021, I think we had 6 or 7 lobbyists in total in DC for crypto. And now for FIT21, we had calls that would be 50 to 60 people. It's like, this has been great. In the past 4 years, the industry woke up and said, we have to engage at DC, and we hire some good people. And that's what we're seeing the wins now happening recently, especially in May. We're seeing a lot of product and a lot of talent on the advocacy side really show up on Capitol Hill and lead to those policy wins we've had really recently, which is exciting to watch.
So obviously, as someone who's been in it, really from the beginning, and well before crypto was this mainstream breaking news type of thing, what do you think flipped the switch to make it something that is finally getting that recognition on the Hill?
I would say there were probably 3 or 4 big events in my experience, kind of walking it through here. The big one was Libra. Libra was definitely the first thing that Facebook put out and got rebranded to Diem. But that was the first time there's a lot of big tech scrutiny on Capitol Hill, and Facebook for some reason decided that this was a great time to introduce their stablecoin like idea with Libra, and that woke everyone up. Especially on the Democrat side, but even Republicans, there was a unanimous feeling that this is not going to work. And I actually remember having a meeting in the Capitol about 2 days before they announced it. They kind of briefed certain crypto members of Congress. It was like 3 of us. And instantly, from both the Democrat, Republican, or the 2 Republicans, we both are all saying, like, this is not going to work. This is not going to fly. So Libra was a wake-up call. I see the broker rule was definitely a wake-up call as well in 2021. Again, we didn't get that win there. We lost because of politics, but it definitely woke folks up saying, hey, look, this is an industry that is new. They have a voice, but it's going to be really tough, obviously, to get a lot of these wins here. And that's what we see a doubling down from a lot of folks in industry of resources here. And then finally, I'll say it's the election issue. That's been the big thing for this year, is just seeing that not only is there a crypto voter, and not only is there a pretty sizable crypto PAC, but they're using the resources correctly. They're backing the right candidates on both sides of the aisle, and they're getting wins. And if you look at the Politico headlines, especially recently, one of the best headlines I saw was the Super Tuesday big winner was crypto. And that was like the leading headline here. And that's crazy because, we didn't have FTX in the Blockchain Association, but I would run to Sam all the time on Capitol Hill. We kind of had a good rapport and good friendship a little bit before everything went down, obviously. And, that scar is definitely still here in Capitol Hill. But to go from that moment and being down so low in terms of just a viewpoint on Capitol Hill of crypto and the industry as a whole to where we are now has been nothing short of incredible. And a lot of that's both to the policymakers, the staff, but also to a lot of folks that the industry has hired here in DC to go in the front lines. And, it's going to really tough situations, especially after FTX. There were a lot of offices that would not respond to any crypto meetings. They want to talk to anyone in crypto. They just wanted to stay 100 feet away plus from anything that involved FTX or crypto as a whole. So that pivot recently has been really incredible to see.
That I was wondering what kind of impact that was going to have, because the way that the FTX thing went down left a bad taste for a lot of people. And it seems that anti-crypto politicians I was like, that's going to be their hook. This is what they're going to use. This is what they're going to be able to try to say, no, this is why it's so bad. So I've been pleasantly surprised as well to see the pivot and the shift in seeing just how many politicians are willing to get behind or at least learn more. They're not as hesitant with it that I thought they would be based on the FTX situation. Are you finding that politicians are more receptive to the idea of crypto because there's an understanding of it more, or is it more of they are coming to terms with the fact that this is not going anywhere?
I'd say it's a little bit of both, honestly.
Okay.
I've talked to a lot of the younger members of Congress, and actually a lot of candidates. So those who, some have won, some have lost, but I've talked to a lot of the candidates from both sides of the aisle, and it's been a mix of a couple things. A lot of them do own crypto, I've noticed. I talked to someone yesterday who had pretty sizable amount of Bitcoin actually from 2017, and it's like, hear him publicly say that was really exciting to have that kind of backing, at least knowledge base. But at the same time, also, I think the mainstream just narrative around crypto does correlate to what we see on Capitol Hill. If all the chatter is just FTX, 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 we see that mimicked very heavily here on Capitol Hill. It's a very headline-driven city here in DC. A lot of folks don't get past whatever is the headline there, and so we've seen that kind of be adverse when it comes to like the Hamas using crypto to fund all their operations narrative that a lot of folks are pushing on the skeptic side. But at the same time, we've seen a lot of the resurgence happening with the elections, and like I mentioned, those political headlines. I've seen that really resonate with a lot of folks, both on the staff side as well as the member side, saying like crypto's back and they're here to play, and there doesn't seem to be some guy or girl making it all about themselves. It's a whole organic industry. There's not one person leading the charge. This is a whole effort here. And I think the last thing is just the grassroots, the people who are engaging on social media, the people who are calling the members of Congress. I used to be that Hill staffer that would pick up the phone when you would call your office. Took thousands and thousands of calls, but those actually do work. And I remember several times being in both offices that I worked in, where times the member of Congress would say, "Hey, I don't know really where to vote on this issue. Did we get any calls about it? Where the calls break down, pro or against?" And people don't think that happens. No, it really does happen. And I got several texts and calls the day after Fit 21, for example, and they were from chief of staffs or staffers in various offices. And they said that crypto was by far the number one issue for the month of May that folks were calling or writing their member of Congress about. Again, it's one thing to post a tweet. It's a whole nother thing to actively reach out to your member of Congress, and they have to take a record of it. And they are really shocked by just the number of people engaged. And so that's really exciting to see the grassroots really move up to here in DC.
That's awesome. Yeah, obviously at Crypto Law, we kind of, our focus, our area of expertise would be the legal side of things. Law of the court cases and having the document library. But we too recognize that there has to be direct communication with Congress. And so what we found, because everyone was like, what can we do? Utilizing our Connect to Congress allows those letters, that direct connection to Congress. And I would like to think that the success that we've had with that has contributed as well, because those letters are going directly to the Congress people who then, like you said, there has to be a record of it. So I definitely agree that grassroots effort is definitely making a difference. And like you said, tweeting about it is one thing, but it seems to really be infiltrating the Hill, which is exciting. I love, speaking of tweets, the way that you break down kind of the recaps or updates of what's going on the Hill. It's easy to understand. So I do want to just let our audience members know, if you do not follow Ron on X, you should. We'll post his Twitter handle or X handle in a moment. So you guys make sure you follow him for those kind of easy to understand updates on the Hill. I also want to point out that the Blockchain Association website has a lot of fun facts. I was scrolling through and gives you real numbers. And I think that's important too, when people are trying to figure out or educate themselves on crypto. And you get all of these kind of interesting information that'll come out. And when you're going through the website, it breaks down percentages and kind of busts some of the myths that are there. So that's also a nice place for people to go to kind of learn a little bit more factual information about crypto. I would like to kind of dive in a little bit into something you touched on earlier about the kind of the way that the industry has come together and used their resources correctly. So I know, one of the big things that I'm seeing for election year has been the Fair Shake PAC. That's one. I know Stand with Crypto just hit over 1 million supporters. I think that was last week. So obviously it is something that grassroots efforts coming together and, being loud about it. Can you talk a little bit about what you think is significant about like Fair Shake, for example, and what that could mean for the elections across the country?
Yeah, I mean, the thing about DC, I used to run campaigns for. I got into the DC side of things back in Texas in the state senate there. But if there's one thing I know from running those campaigns is money does talk, and a lot of folks, obviously in the crypto space, have been really doubling down in that the Fair Shake PAC there. So that's not say ruffled feathers, but it's caught a lot of attention in DC. And I would say, a lot of folks in DC were not really expecting the crypto voter. It kind of gets a little side eye. A lot of folks dismiss it. Who's going to the polls in their mind versus, when you have things like abortion or the border or the economy, inflation, and you have all these other major issues facing, folks and everyday Americans. The idea that crypto regulations up there, a lot of folks scoff at that. And again, a lot of lobbyists too. A lot of folks don't understand this. A very engaged grassroots, as you mentioned earlier, and that has been just a complete pivot. And I think, at some point, the PAC does play a heavy role there because a lot of politicians see, millions of dollars for the taking here and for an issue area that's brand new, that doesn't have like really political lines for the most part. So a lot of folks have been really engaged on that side, again, from both Democrats and Republicans, Senate and House. And actually, one of my favorite stories recently was a Democrat Senate candidate. She said that she got asked, and I had multiple of these stories, but she's got asked several times. She had 4 times, I believe, that she had asked at just random town halls, random constituent meetings about crypto regulation. And she's like said, I'm here to meet with the Blockchain Association because I don't know anything. And I keep getting asked about it. And we're like, yeah. And she's like, no, I'm being dead serious. Like I keep getting asked about it on the campaign trail. And that's really exciting because a lot of folks in DC don't think that's a real thing. And that's the opposite. And that's really turned a lot of the sentiment here in DC. And that's now it's turned to an election issue. And now we have a sitting presidential candidate who is saying very positive things about crypto recently. And that goes against a lot of his track record from his previous administration. But, people change their mind. I've seen it happen several times, both on Capitol Hill and in the industry itself. So it's been really exciting to see that groundswell, show up. But I think the last thing we were trying to do with this election, though, is to really avoid the hyper-partisanship. When anything becomes an election issue, it's really rare for both sides to agree on it. National defense is probably one of the few issues, but that's it. And so if you throw crypto in the mix, we can have a situation where, that I've been trying to avoid for years. And I mentioned, the first bill we worked on had 4 Republicans, 4 Democrats. That was very important to have it equally bipartisan. And so we want to make sure crypto stays bipartisan. If it becomes the Republican issue, for example, well, it'll be good for some years, and then there'll be some years it'll be terrible. And that's not, healthy for the market. That's not healthy for bipartisanship. And, maybe crypto is a way we can get more folks to agree here in DC. And we've already seen it a little bit. Again, the FIT 21 vote, for example, 71 Democrats. It's one of the highest bipartisan bills for, of that caliber size. And many people didn't see that coming. So I just hope that at least when it comes to, this whole presidential election, this next 6 months or 5 months, I guess, we just keep the bipartisan vibes going strong, because it's really easy for folks to go back into their camps and say, my team versus your team. But at least in crypto, we're all in this together, and, folks get along regardless of their ideology. So let's keep that, mantra and ethos here in DC, and, let's keep the antics to the other issues.
Yeah, it's amazing, because I think going into this election year, there was a lot of assumptions that it was not going to be an issue for the ballot, and it was not going to be something. We knew, obviously, that there are people who who are very anti-crypto, who have made that known. They've used their voices politically. Elizabeth Warren is the one that comes to mind for me, obviously, as someone who's in Massachusetts. But I have been shocked to see the number of Democrats who have been involved in supporting crypto, and I think that when there is clarity in the way that we are allowed to innovate, and crypto being one of those ways, that's good for America, right? So it doesn't matter what party you are, it's good for us as a country. So it is exciting to see that this can be something that we can work together regardless of our ideologies. So you had mentioned Fit 21. I just kind of want to go through Fit 21 and really anything in this last few weeks. It's been a busy few months, I guess you could say, on the Hill. If you could just kind of break down some of the, most recent exciting news on the Hill.
Yeah. So for a lot of folks, DC, they say it moves slow, and that's true. Don't get me wrong. DC moves very slow. As someone who's been trying to pass a bill that deals with securities laws and commodities laws for crypto for the past 8 years, it hasn't become law yet in some form or fashion. I understand DC takes a long time. But the good thing is that there is momentum, and that has been very apparent. I mean, I don't think we would have the ETH ETF, for example, if we didn't have the success politically that we had with SAB 121. So I'll start with SAB 121 really quickly first. For those who don't know, it was a staff count in Bolton 121. This fight's been dating back for over 2 years. And we had to go through, I don't know if we foiled the SEC on that front, but also we had, several Senate offices like Senator Lummis, for example, really engaged in that, sitting with Patrick McHenry and Kristen Gillibrand as well. And they were able actually to get a pretty good groundswell of folks, 21 Democrats in the House. I think we had a 10 or 11 in the Senate. And it was the most bipartisan bill that Joe Biden vetoed in his presidency so far. And again, taking a step back, he had the majority leader, Chuck Schumer, vote for it, and the Speaker of the House. Those two don't agree on much, but it's kind of crazy the president vetoed what the two most senior folks in Congress voted for. So that's shocking, but also to make Joe Biden make that decision, or at least the Biden administration to make that decision, we're in brand new territory here. And that really teed up what was Fit 21. And that's, the big bill, the one that folks have been lobbying Capitol Hill for years on this matter. Fit 21 was the final product, and we were thinking probably 40, 30 Democrats, but we got 71, which was insane. Now, the problem with Fit 21, though, is that there is no Senate companion. There is no direct lead. There's a Lummis-Gillibrand bill, which is very similar, but it's not the exact same bill. So we're kind of have to restart the whole process over again. And that is a little tough because we are in an election year and everything is starting to get really slowed down here in DC. So a lot of folks are retreating back to their camps, and there's not much time to work on really substantive policy to this point. And it's just the rest of June, a little bit of July, September, and it's November already. So that's a very, sobering situation, is that we don't have much time, but we do have a lot of momentum. And so the question is kind of, where do we move to next with this momentum we built? Do we try to move and restart the process on Fit 21 in the Senate? Maybe. It takes a lot of effort, and there's not much time. I think kind of what the next play probably is going to be pivot to stables. Stable coins was really, really hot about like 3-4 months ago, but there was a huge holdup between a lot of the congressional leaders and those in the admin on the state pathway. Is it going to be a state like Wyoming or New York regulating their own, respective businesses in their state when it comes to stablecoin issuance? Or is it going to be the entire, federal government instead? And that really has been a line here where, more on the Republican side, the saying states, some more on the Democrat side and admin are saying all federal. But at least right now, that's the last holdup. For the most part, that bill for stablecoins is pretty much done and has buy-in from the significant amount of senior folks in Congress. And so if you can get over that last hurdle, which I do think we will by the end of the year in some form or fashion, we could have a stablecoin regime and really use that to springboard into the next Congress of 2025 and restart Fit, no matter what, if it's a Democrat House or Republican House, whatever the makeup is, we will keep building on that momentum. So I'd say stay tuned for the stablecoin conversation, but understand that we're probably in the next 2 months when things really will be picking up on Capitol Hill. And then right when August starts, that's when most folks are just completely 100% focusing on the reelection or the presidential campaign or what have you. So things will probably pick back up in November to December, but we don't have too much time. And of course, we'll have some pretty big hearings too. Like Chair Gensler will be coming up this week, but it's more of a smaller hearing on appropriations. He'll likely come up sometime in the next 3 or 4 months in front of financial services. And like, that's the big hearing. That's the grilling hearing. That's the one that you have a lot of members engaged on. So we'll have plenty of stuff to keep folks entertained. Don't get me wrong, but legislatively, things really do grind to a halt at this time. And we're trying to make sure we use the momentum we built in the past couple of weeks to get something over the finish line, whether that be market structure or whether it be stable coins.
And how do you end up making, or how does that decision end up being made? Okay, so how do you give us a little insight on how that it could go? A decision will be made one way or the other, where it's market structure or stable coins, right? How does that decision get made?
It's funny because when I talk to a lot of our member companies, one week I'm like, hey, look, FIT 21 is what we're talking. Market structure is what we're talking about. FIT 21, that's the bill this week. And then next week it's like, sorry, stables is now the most important bill this week. So the crypto policy moves so fast. It is unlike any industry besides maybe AI right now. Like it is a rapidly evolving industry. The hits keep coming, and there's a lot of things we got to react to in real time. So we can't really control the process by any means. It'd be great if we can, but a large majority of it falls in the hands of just a few people. Like Patrick McHenry gets to decide where the House Financial Services Committee goes. Then we have Sherrod Brown, who is the Democrat lead in Senate banking. He hasn't really been too keen on anything in the crypto space. And so a lot of the movement on legislation, for example, has stopped at his desk because he just doesn't really care for his committee to engage. They'd rather focus on other issues. And you have obviously Chair Gensler. Whatever he does, there's usually equal and opposite reaction from either Congress or the industry. So, there's a few folks here and there that kind of, turn the political dials one way or the other that, evolves the situation day by day. But, if we had any control whatsoever, believe me, I would have gotten this stuff done years ago. But political wins are political wins. And the last thing, though, is the momentum is real. And that's where you really have to jeopardize or move on the groundswell you built and try to get something over, because you can lose that momentum incredibly quickly. So and that's obviously very important here in DC, when momentum really does lead to bipartisanship, not partisanship.
It's funny because I do feel like there is that momentum now. And for so long, with all of the legal cases that were going on, it felt like it was the SEC that was making a lot of moves and not Congress. And so there's a lot of frustration, because if there was just a law that set this to stone, if we weren't litigating this instead, so I think for the last few years, there's been a lot of frustration in the industry because of the way that the SEC was so active against crypto. And now to see that there is that momentum, that's really exciting. And I hope we keep that momentum going. Do you think that kind of the struggle to get to this momentum has affected the industry in America at all?
I mean, at least the folks we're talking to on the membership side, there's a lot more optimism about DC. DC, a lot of our folks, we don't draw attention to ourselves as much as we can, because, again, it's not about the folks behind the scenes. It's the folks who are actually putting the legislation out and the staffs who help out as well. So, we kind of largely operate behind the scenes here. And again, more on the education side, but also just putting the right people in front of the right folks within the government to, at least have a good dialogue, and good conversation forward. And so I think that's really starting to show here. And we've had a lot of outreach from the campaigns on both sides, very engaged on this issue, or want to learn more. So that's been a very exciting thing to see more. And I think we're just trying to take that momentum, not make it partisan, and then move over to, let's get something across the finish line here. Because also, this is one of the least productive Congresses in decades. They haven't really passed that many bills. It's a split Congress. So, to get to where we are now with this much Democrat support in a split Congress is really incredible. And, again, the dynamics can really change after November. We don't know what we're going to be looking at. We could probably have a Republican Senate and Democrat House. So we could have just the inverse here, and we've got to work at both sides again. So it's a lot we have to focus on. And at the same time, it's also just building our champions, having them understand the issue even more, so they can go toe to toe with a lot of folks on the skeptic side when the time comes. And so the exciting part for me personally is that I've seen when we only had 5 members really give a care about this issue back in 2017. And now it's, over 250, 300 members of Congress, at least. And And that's been really cool to see. And it's still picking up like crazy, at least on our end, from the candidates as well as the members themselves. So we'll hope we can, move forward here. But at least when it comes to, the FTX and everything that we've kind of gone through to get to this point, I'm sure there's going to be something that happens this year that will be, detrimental again. But hey, we've been bounced back up every single time, and we're still here, and we're kicking, and we're winning. So I think it's really good to kind of just keep telling folks in DC, like, this isn't going away at all, and we're here to stay. And the SC arguments for years was, we don't need new legislation. The rules are clear. And it is very obvious that argument has eroded over, the court cases, but also the congressional actions. But even the Biden admin saying, hey, we need a regulatory framework. That's a pretty big pivot from 3 years ago, when the SEC was saying no legislation needed. The 1930s laws are clear. So that's been a really exciting thing to see. But again, long way to go still before we actually have a final win, rules on the books. And that can also change a lot too if we have a new admin. I mean, that direction can get changed in a heartbeat. So just stay tuned. It can get really busy really quickly, and then it can be really slow in DC for a little bit.
Yeah. The last thing that I just kind of want to ask you is, can you just briefly kind of touch on why it matters to have everyday people who care about crypto to engage in politics, to vote, or to stay active? Why is that good for crypto?
Yeah. So again, like I said, when I was a Hill staffer, I was that person that was responding to every single email. 1 second I'm talking about like vaccines for animals, the next second I'm talking about crypto, and the next second I'm talking about healthcare systems. These are very complicated issues. So usually what happens is that, so let's just say someone reaches out to their member of Congress. What typically happens is that the staffer who's in their mid-20s will usually reach out to someone like myself and say, hey, I don't know this issue. Or I had someone reach out to me about market structure legislation. I don't know what market structure even means. Please walk me through this. And so like, that's kind of where I come in and be like, hi, Blockchain Association, meet Coinbase. Let's talk about, why market structure is important and why, we need to have a framework for crypto to protect consumers and keep the jobs here that are, bleeding by the day. So that's usually how the process starts. That outreach from the constituent, from a voter in their state or the district that reaches out to them and the office saying, I don't know this issue. I want to learn more so I can seem educated to my constituents. So I recommend heavily for those who are listening, again, it's one thing to tweet, but when you reach out via email or via a call, they have to get back to you largely. Most offices will get back to you, especially if you live in a district. Don't call Elizabeth Warren's office. You don't live in Massachusetts. Call your home senator. But they keep a record of that. So they keep a record in terms of people who are supportive. And as one Hill staffer put to me, we have an anti-crypto tab and a pro-crypto tag. We have not used the anti-crypto tag once. We have used the pro-crypto tag over several dozen times. And so I think that's a good thing to show to the senator or elected official when he or she is saying, where do my constituents stand on an issue? But also it's good just for other folks to know that, hey, look, your elected officials really can make a change in policy here. Otherwise, it goes to the courts. And again, the courts have been largely good for crypto, but there have been some cases the crypto hasn't won. And so the results are a little hard to map out. Whereas in Congress, it's a lot more transparent. There's an amendment process. The bill text is out there. You have a lot more of an ability to, at least engage on the issue and to see where the final product eventually turns out to be. So always engage your member of Congress. I always say, again, email is probably one of the best ways to reach out, even if it's short and sweet. If it's a personalized message, it's not like, copy paste. I would personally have to, as a staffer, respond to that. And that's a great way for me to, as the Blockchain Association, come in and educate folks, but also at the same time to stay engaged with your elected officials. So highly recommend it. It's going great so far, guys. So please keep up the great work and engagement to Capitol Hill.
Yeah, well, you also please keep up the great work. This is awesome. Thank you for taking your time to educate us and being on our show today. So thank you so much. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and to our audience as well, have a wonderful day. See you guys next week.
Thanks, y'all.